in Ireland because it would cause controversy with the Civil War and all that. So they decided not to tell us at all. So our history ended around 1900, or the beginning of the First World War. That's given out about all the time, you know. There's no historical accurate stuff.
And it wasn't taught?
Just wasn't taught.
Sure, because there would have been a lot of things.
What that's called is an Irish solution to an Irish problem.
It is an Irish solution.
You know.
Bury our heads in the sand.
Yeah, you're so familiar with that here in Boston.
What would have been taught would be, I mean, the Easter Rebellion would definitely have been taught, because that's part of, it's almost part of the iconography of the Republic. That's, I mean, the Declaration of the Republic was, the proclamation was in 1916. We actually didn't become a republic officially, legally, until 1947, when there was a statute passed to make it a republic instead of a free state. But when I was in school, which is slightly a few years after John, we did do 1916, and but one of the things that was, and we learned, okay, the practical things about, you know, the formation of the IRB, which was the precursor of the IRA. The IRB was the Irish Republican Brotherhood, and that led to, and you also had James Connolly, the Labour movement, which had the People's Army, the Citizens Army, which was a Labour movement army based on socialist ideals. So the two came together around that time. It was 1916 probably happened because it was the middle of the First World War. There was always a doctrine that England's difficulty was Ireland's opportunity. So they were diverted in some ways in the First World War, in the middle of, you know, the Battle of the Somme, and a huge number of people, hundreds of thousands of people were being killed in France. Up to 60,000, 70,000 of them Irish.
Irish, yes.
Which is something that I didn't learn in school, was a lot of Irish people at the time of the rising were actually fighting for Britain on the fields of France in the British Army. And that was never spoken about either. Like John said, that, you know, in family histories, that was never spoken about either. If your grandfather fought on the British side.
But it was never considered to be part of Irish history,
and
Irish national history.
Yeah, it wasn't patriotic in later years to fought in the First World War. People wanted to forget about it. Although the people fighting in the First World War were promised by the British that if they won the war, if the freedom of small nations would be given as a result of it, but they reneged on that price, on that promise. You know.
We just had gone to the Armenian Museum for Mark's class, where the Holocaust had happened between the Turks and the Armenians. And in a similar situation, the Armenians were invited by the French to fight as a foreign legion, under the premise that once the war was over, they too would be given their independent homeland, and the French reneged on them.
The Balkans, it was the Balkans.
So in some ways, to get back to 1916, the difficulties in teaching it in some ways was partly because it was, in many ways, a myth was written about it. It was written into the history books as a romantic, idealistic battle which happened in a vacuum almost. Like, we weren't taught the context that, you know, what the reality for Irish people in Dublin in 1916 was. They were in the middle of effectively a war. There was a British occupation. A lot of their brothers and sisters and brothers and fathers and uncles were away in France fighting for the British, in the expectation that when the war was over, the Irish National Party, Redmond Party, was going to get home rule. So there was a dynamic going on in politics too, and then there was these idealists who were teachers, poets, intellectuals, who had decided, for their own reasons,
the blood sacrifice,
that this wasn't going to be enough, that they were never going to get independence from the British without fighting for it.
Yeah.
And they weren't happy with home rule under a British, like as you described it, the Canadian solution.
The other thing that would be in high school, as you call it high school, we call it secondary school. You had to take history up for 3 years. And part of your upbringing, say, most of us would have gone to Catholic school, Christian Brothers school, who were very, very, very patriotic, would have taught us IRA songs there would have been, there was, at the time, there would have been trouble in the north of Ireland, so there would have been a patriotic allegiance to the sort of things that were happening to the Catholics, anti-British sentiments. We'd have been taught those kind of things without actually teaching us them. I remember a song that the Christian Brothers taught us: armoured cars and tanks and guns came to take away our sons, but every man who stands behind the wire. But it was about IRA, internment. Which, okay, but that's the context of you going into secondary school, or you call it high school, and then being taught about Irish history and the rebellion. My memory is that I didn't learn anything about the Irish Rising, except what I can remember is that we were told they were shot dead, they were executed. One of them was executed in a wheelchair. James Connolly, they even took him out in a wheelchair.
The other guy had the TV, wasn't
yeah,
it?
and that De Valera didn't get shot. Now at the time, De
Valera
was our president.
No,
okay, he would have been our president when I was in secondary
Oh
school.
yeah, sorry.
He was in the Rising and he was fighting for Irish freedom, and now he's our president, and he didn't get shot
Because he was an American.
Because he was.
He was born in New York.
The sentiments that I would have learned from that was that the Rising was, you know, I didn't get any idea that they were, you know, they rose up against the British but failed. Only later now, in hindsight, do I know a lot more about the history. But your question asked me what I knew then and what I was taught then.
Yeah,
so, I mean, I think that's, we tend to read into history in hindsight and our own experience. I'm 43. So I think, you know, that's one of the things that...
But wasn't it, the build-up to all that trouble at the end of the 19th century, nationalism, and the beginning, was in 1800, the British repealed our Parliament and created the Act of Union, and created the United Kingdom of England, Scotland, Wales, and Ireland, and totally switched off any possibility then by getting rid of our Parliament of an individual state in Ireland, and that had caused trouble right through the 19th century.
And centuries previous, loads of uprising. Every generation had its uprising.
Will we go on to number one there?
Yeah.